So my disclaimer is, if you are watching this presentation and you have been on Upwork for a while and you know all the ins and outs of it, and you understand how you get paid, you understand what clients do to post a job, you have a general idea of job success score and things like that, this presentation is not for you. So you can skip it, or if you feel like this is something that would be helpful for you to know, the real purpose of this presentation is to help people figure out whether or not it is worth their time to try to get on Upwork. So it's not the right tool for everybody, and sometimes people have an issue getting accepted on the Upwork platform. So I wanted to give this presentation as sort of the overview of the most important policies you need to be aware of with regards to Upwork, talking about what kind of people I see landing jobs the most, and then also some of the specifics about the different policies that Upwork has about what you can and can't do, how you get paid, things you need to consider as you're bidding. And I hope that this is super helpful. So as I mentioned before, as I go through the presentation, go ahead and use the chat function to drop your questions in there. I will be providing sort of general information about what's been true currently or in the past with regard to certain policies about, percentages that Upwork takes and things like that. But I do always, I provide resource articles, or I will tell you what to Google to find what's most accurate at the time that you are watching this presentation, because Upwork does change these things a lot. Okay, so at a very, very general level, Upwork is the biggest job board in the world. It is one of the easiest ways for people to break into freelancing if they work in a freelance category that is prominent on Upwork. And you don't have to be a member to see what those are. You're always welcome to go and take a look at Upwork to see what's going to be the most effective fit for you, if there is enough demand in the type of skills that you have for it to make it worth your time to be a member of Upwork, either a free member or a paid member. So the way that this works is Upwork is essentially an intermediary or a third party. They're connecting freelancers with clients and vice versa. So rather than having to go out there and try to, say, post on Craigslist and receive a bunch of replies that may or may not be accurate, a client chooses to use Upwork because they know that there are thousands of freelancers on that site who are experienced. And it really is the biggest job board in the world. A lot of very successful companies and individuals use Upwork to find their freelance talent. So there's two main groups of people that are on Upwork: clients and freelancers. And sometimes you will be both of these. I have a client account and a freelancer account on Upwork. So I land business as a freelancer and I hire other freelancers as a client. Now, the way that this works, when a client has a job that they are interested in outsourcing, first of all, it's not a guarantee that they're going to outsource that particular job. They could be budget shopping around. They could be looking to see if there's someone in the marketplace who offers the skill that they're looking for. They could be trying to get a sense of how long it would take to complete this project, but they'll go on Upwork and they will post a job. So sometimes these job descriptions have a great deal of information, and other times they have hardly any information, which makes it hard for us as freelancers to figure out how to reply. But there are two choices that a client has when posting a job on Upwork, and it's essentially a call for proposals. They want to see who is out there doing this type of work and who's available to handle it, and their background and suggested price. So the fixed price job is where the client just wants to pay a flat amount for a project. That could even be a huge project that's broken down into multiple fixed price milestones. That's where you and the client come to an agreement on a set amount of money that a job is going to cost. At that point, the client chooses to hire you and selects a button that says hire this freelancer, and it is their responsibility to fund that money into escrow. And this is a big point of confusion for people who've never used Upwork before. They say, well, why is this other company holding the money that I'm going to make from this website? Remember, Upwork is that intermediary that is connecting you with the client. One of the benefits of using it, especially for new freelancers, is that they do offer an escrow service on fixed price jobs. That means that they will hold the money that the client funds for the release of that milestone until you request for it to be released, and either the client approves it or the client forgets about it and it sits there for a period of time before it's automatically released to you. So fixed price jobs are often preferable for a lot of freelancers, but there are certain types of jobs where it doesn't make sense to do fixed price milestones. A great example would be a virtual assistant who does a variety of different tasks. It would be really hard for that virtual assistant to say, this would be $5 and this would be $7. And I did 3 of those, so that's $25. It's very confusing for the client. So usually a client will hire a virtual assistant on an hourly basis. Another example of a freelancer who might get hired hourly is a proofreader or an editor. It's very hard to turn those into fixed price jobs. You certainly can, but those are situations in which hourly works better. So an hourly job means that you're responsible for billing time in Upwork's feature known as the work diary. Certain clients will require that you use Upwork's time tracking tool. Others will allow you to add manual time. Any client that hires me hourly, I request that they remove the button that says that I have to use the time tracking tool. That's for a couple of reasons. First of all, the tool is super glitchy. What it does is it's supposed to operate in the background of your computer, taking screenshots, measuring how many keystrokes you make, and capturing other information that the client can use to decide whether or not you're truly working, right? The problem with that is that it freezes a lot. And sometimes if you're in the middle of working on a project, you might not know it's frozen or that it's stopped tracking your time. Also, it's very difficult for me to remember to turn it on and then to turn it off. So I'm very wary of forgetting to bill for time that I should have, or overbilling a client for something when I forget, oh, I switched projects. I shouldn't be, time tracking on Upwork right now. I'm working for a different client. So I ask my clients not to use that feature. Now, when you log your time manually in Upwork's work diary, the challenge with that is that there's no payment protection. Now, Upwork's payment protection that applies to hourly jobs is there if you log time using the time tracker. It's taking screenshots, it's posting those along with the time that you logged, and then the client can review it. And if they see that there are issues, like say that there's a screenshot of you and it's got a screenshot of you playing around on your Facebook profile when you were supposed to be doing something for the client, they can delete that time so that they don't have to pay you for time that wasn't spent on their project. But if you don't bill through the time tracker, you lose the payment protection of otherwise. Let's say that I billed a client for 10 hours worth of work and I used that time tracker and it took screenshots and it took those keystrokes and it saw that I was working for the client then cannot come back and say, I don't approve this time. Even if you go to the level of a dispute and it can pretty well be shown that you did the work, Upwork is going to back you up as the freelancer. If you log your time manually, you lose that protection. So you are counting on your client to pay you. The payment for these works a little bit differently. So, and I think I'll go into that a little bit later in the presentation. We'll talk about like the timelines for when you get paid for doing particular types of jobs. Now, some people will also prefer to work hourly because they're trying to hit a particular hour mark on Upwork. I've worked with a number of virtual assistants who are trying to hit their first 100 hours on Upwork. So they were very specifically looking for hourly jobs because that's most of what they were working on. And they knew that they were going to get certain benefits. And there's certain jobs where clients can say, I want to work only with somebody who's done at least 100 hours or so many hours or has such and such job success score. Now, I love Upwork. You're going to hear mixed opinions about it. If you're here, you're probably on my email list or in my Make Money on Upwork Facebook group. So hopefully either your own experience or my talking about it has converted you into believing in the power of Upwork. But I really think that Upwork is so helpful, especially for new freelancers, but even established freelancers. It brings you business that you wouldn't otherwise have. If I hadn't used Upwork, there would be lots of clients and really great clients that I never would have had in my business because Upwork was essentially the one who introduced us to one another, right? They are a lead generation service for you. And it always blows my mind when new freelancers say, what do you mean I have to pay Upwork a portion of the job I do, or a paid membership is $10 a month? And I will chat about this a little bit later in this presentation. This is a business tool. Very rare to find a business tool that is free. There are really worthwhile paid tools, and you have to think of it as an investment. So for me, that investment is so worth it, especially if you're a new freelancer and you're trying to get your feet wet. I understand it's hard to think about giving up a portion of what you make with each individual job or even paying monthly, but it really is an investment in your business. I love the fact that there is the escrow service and the hourly protections are there to help you. The escrow service tells you that the client already has the money to pay you, and now it's just sitting in Upwork's escrow protection. So that is a huge peace of mind for a new freelancer or even for an experienced freelancer who's been burned getting paid on time. Every payment issue I have ever had with a client across 6 years, except for one, did not happen on Upwork. So only one time have I had a payment related issue with a client. And I'll share that just so that you're aware of it. If they have a credit card that's on file with their account and it expires, or they report it's stolen and they're waiting for a new one and they don't update that information, or if like say the charge goes through and then they file a dispute with their credit card company, that's a situation where maybe even that hourly protection wouldn't help you. That has happened to me one time in 350 jobs across Upwork and Elance, so I would not be seriously concerned about it. But almost all the other times I've had to chase down money, it's off the site, right? It's very hard for new freelancers to make sure they get paid. Many of them don't know how to use contracts. They don't know how to ask for the money. How much should I get up front versus when I complete the job? How do I make sure that my client pays on time? It's a huge administrative headache. Upwork takes that away from you. Another thing I love about it, especially if you're just starting, you can build up your resume and experience at the same time you are getting positive, hopefully if you're doing things right, positive feedback from your freelance clients. So you are essentially earning a rating on Upwork based on how happy past clients have been with the work that you have done on their jobs. And it allows you to sample out different types of skills and projects to decide what's right for you, but you're building up that experience all the way and becoming a better freelancer and practicing new things that you can incorporate into your business in the future. So what a cool way to do that, where a lot of the pressure is off of you marketing wise. If you use another marketing vehicle, it's really all on you to go out there and get things generated and started. Whereas if you log into Upwork today, there's lots of jobs that have been posted by prospective clients. Your job on Upwork is to convince the client that you're the right one for that particular job. And I have to say this because every so often, and this comes up in my Facebook group a lot, people will ask, well, do I really need to pay the $10 a month? It's $10. I recognize that that's $120 a year, but making an investment in your business is no different than running a Facebook ad. You're not going to come out 100% profit running a Facebook ad. You might have to pay for a month of LinkedIn Premium to use all the connections that you want to reach out to prospective people. So it is very, very affordable compared to other options. One service that I reviewed and actually don't recommend for new freelance writers is a paid service that requires people to pay, I believe it's $120 a month for 6 months. Now that's really expensive, right? And I reviewed it and I tried it and I was like, this doesn't really work. It's not worth it. It's definitely not worth $120. But $10 a month on Upwork, even the free account on Upwork, plus the portion that you pay out to clients, I always tell people, you're going to pay out a percentage of every job to a client. Build that into your pricing or accept it as a cost of doing business. I pay PayPal fees. I pay internet domain registration fees. I pay for my internet, which is 95% used for business. Those are all business expenses. Your membership to Upwork is a business expense. So if you're in the United States and you're paying taxes on your freelance income because you're making more than $600 a year, that money that you invest in Upwork is a membership for something related to your business. So it is a business deductible expense. It is well worth it, and it is definitely an investment. So definitely consider it that way. And if you want to sign up for the paid membership for 1 to 3 months and then say, I'm going to evaluate this and decide if it's worth it and cut it off if I'm not getting traction there, that's fine. But definitely give it a try, because it breaks my heart when I see people who are writing themselves out of it because it costs $10 a month. That's literally so easy. And I get it, because when I got started, I thought for 3 weeks about whether or not I should buy this $50 ebook. I mean, I read everything about it. Should I invest this $50? It's $50. I've never made money freelancing before. But looking back, the amount of money that you can make on Upwork in comparison to what you pay in is so worth it for the protections they give you, for the fact that they're bringing you clients you wouldn't have otherwise met, and you're essentially developing some really cool social proof online that you're a legitimate freelance contractor. So what happens when a client posts a job? I feel this is worthwhile to go through. So a client posts a job. Let's say they want to hire a Facebook advertising manager. They might post a ton of information. They might post nothing. But when they post a job, it'll usually be at least a couple of sentences. And if they're vague, your response is your opportunity to ask questions. But whether they're clear or vague, freelancers will respond to the request for proposal based on their interest in completing that particular job. In addition to saying, here's my qualifications, this is what I think it would cost, and this is how long I think it would take me to do it, it's also your chance to ask more questions. So if you don't have enough information to give a bid, don't. Just say, hey, I don't have enough information yet. I have a few questions for you. Can you answer these? And then I'll give you a more accurate bid. Or if they provided some information and it's clear what you'd charge, but you're not sure what their timeline is and whether that fits in with your schedule, go ahead and ask it. Now, the client will look at the proposals that they find intriguing, which is why your pitch and your samples are everything on Upwork. And most of the time when a person is not getting traction on Upwork, it's because something is wrong with their pitch, their samples, or both. Almost 100% of the time, this is the case. And I have reviewed hundreds of people's Upwork pitches and samples. So I know that that is the case because often they experience a quick turnaround after making some changes. So the client decides to interview those who respond. Perhaps they respond to 3 people and say, can we do a quick phone call? Would you be interested in doing a paid sample project, etc. Now, at this point, it's important for you to realize one of these important Upwork policies that I'm going to reference throughout this training, and that is that it is against Upwork's terms of service to do free work. If a client tries to take you off of the platform, meaning that they do not intend to pay you through Upwork, and or if they request free work, then you can actually report them to Upwork. Sometimes clients don't know that, so you kind of casually can mention, hey, it's actually against the rules for you to request free work. I can do a paid sample project. Here's what that would cost. But you want to be aware of these things because you don't want Upwork to misinterpret that you're violating the terms and conditions as well. Now, the client might choose to work with a freelancer they interviewed or not. And there are so many things that go into a client's decision about whether or not now is the right time. I will speak from my own experience as a client. I spent 7 months trying to decide if I wanted to redesign the home pages of my 2 websites. I knew I needed to do it. It was on the to-do list. I hadn't found the right person yet. I didn't feel confident that I had someone who was going to be able to handle it professionally. So I didn't hire. I posted a job on Upwork and I didn't hire. And then eventually I found someone another method. So clients might not have the budget right now. They might not have found a person that was the right fit. They might be so overwhelmed that they can't even imagine hiring a person, or any other number of reasons. So sometimes you'll think the person is like ready to rock and roll, and then you hear nothing and they're busy and they just come back later, or you may never hear from them again. If you're going to be in the freelancing world, you've got to develop a thick skin that you're going to hear a lot of no's, or you're going to hear a lot of no response. Like you don't know why the client never wrote back to you. But this is why you cast a wide net and you pitch a lot on Upwork. All right, as a freelancer, you have membership options on Upwork. The first is making the distinction between whether you'll be an individual or an agency. Agencies operate differently because that's essentially saying that you own a company with multiple different subcontractors underneath you. So most people are going to be an individual. An agency allows you to add other people into the workroom, or let's say you run a virtual assistant agency and you have 3 VAs, right? So you might want to choose to assign which one you want to work on a particular project. But most people are going to be an individual. All that means is that you're going to be the person bidding on and completing the jobs. Now, there's a set cost that you would need to pay to be a paid member of Upwork. You're going to get more benefits as a paid member. You will also pay Upwork a cut of your individual jobs. And that is based on a sliding scale of how much the job is worth with each individual client. So I'll explain this in further detail shortly, how they break that down right now and where you can search to make sure that's still accurate, regardless of when you're watching this training. The more work you do with a particular client and the more money you make from that one person, the lower the fee will be. So it actually favors you landing retainers. It favors you landing big one-time jobs with clients and consistent work, which is what you want anyways as a freelancer, right? So as an individual, you pay essentially for access to the site to bid on jobs using what they call connects. It's a set number of connects that you get every single month. Most jobs at the time of this recording are like 2 to 4 connects. And that's why you have to make some judgment calls about what you bid on and what's going to be most worth your time. And people often say, well, how do I choose which jobs the client is ready to hire on? You don't know. Even I don't always know. I was just telling someone the other day, I feel like I have a pretty good Upwork conversion rate, but I would never even expect that it would be like 50% of, like, if I went and applied for 10 jobs, I may never hear from 5 of those people ever. And maybe I'll have conversations with 2 or 3 people and land a job from 1 or 2 of them. So it's hard to decide. And that's why you want to use your connects as intelligently as you can, but not get all eaten up over, well, I bid on that job and then that client never contacted me or they hired someone else. It's part of the game. Don't sweat it. Memberships also get additional benefits. This was way better on Elance. That's what this site was called before it merged over to Upwork. On Elance, you could see exactly what your competitors bid, which is really helpful information, right? You could see who's at the high end. You could see who was at the low end. You could see whether your bid was right within the average. Today, the information they provide you as a paid member is less helpful. You see the high, the low, and the average. But sometimes people don't know, even freelancers, what they're supposed to be bidding on. They don't have enough information, so they're throwing a placeholder in there. You're also going to have a variety of different types of pricing options and experience level of freelancers. So you can't really count on that high, low, and average to mean a whole lot. It can give you some information, but it's really not going to be the most powerful tool to use. In order to make sure that the costs I'm talking about are still accurate, just Google Upwork membership costs to get current information. And of course, make sure you make that distinction between individual and agency on Upwork. That will tell you what it's going to cost per month. You can always start out for free and upgrade later. Most people do start out for free, but realize that they run out of the connects provided on the free plan pretty quickly. And like I said, it's super affordable. Now, this particular slide is based on the mid 2018 pricing structure, always subject to change. And every time I record one of these things, it will become outdated almost immediately. So I encourage you to look on Upwork's website or Google exactly what it is, the percentage that's paid out to a client. As I shared previously, you definitely benefit from doing more work with the same client. This is an example. So at the first $500 of work that you do with a client, Upwork takes a 20% fee. Once you move into this second range, which hopefully most of your work with a client is within, the percentage of that each milestone that Upwork takes is 10%. And if you do more than $10,000 with a particular client, it will drop down to 5%. A lot of people get hung up on this and say, oh my gosh, I have to pay them $10 a month or whatever the price is. And I also have to give them a portion of the fee. Build the fee into your pricing. You can either choose to tell the client that or not. Sometimes I will tell the client the total cost is blah, 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 including Upwork's fee. Most clients on Upwork recognize that you have to pay to be there and that you are paying a portion of every milestone out to them. I recently had a client where I submitted that the cost was a particular amount and he tried to bargain it down like 25% further. And I kind of explained that, no, I wasn't going to do that anyways, but also I said, because this is our first time working together, Upwork is going to take 20% of my earnings. So you're knocking a significant portion off. It's no longer cost effective for me to do this job at all. So the fee that I presented to you is inclusive of what I have to pay Upwork. And that's why it needs to remain at that amount and can't go any lower. So you can use this particular link, upwork.com/i/howitworks/freelancer, or you can Google Upwork. How do client payments or percentages work as a freelancer? That way you always have the most accurate information. You can see here that it definitely benefits you to have a client with bigger projects or with long-term work. Upwork will send you an email that says something like, congratulations, your Upwork percentage fee has been dropped. Once you pass, like as soon as you pass that $500 mark, you should get some type of a notification, or you'll immediately see it in your next milestone or next hourly payment that Upwork's fee has gone down. So choosing to bid on bigger jobs and retainer-based jobs or ongoing work definitely benefits you, but build that fee into your pricing if you can, or accept it as a cost of doing business, right? The more you work with any one client, the lower the fees are. So look for those ideal clients out there. Charge your client the additional amount. I don't know why so many people find that so hard to do. They will post like, well, you had to pay to be a member, and then you also paid 20% of that job. Well, not really, because I marked my price up by 15 or 20% to account for that. And sometimes I'll eliminate that 20% markup if it's a big enough job or if the client is going to be offering ongoing work. So this is the current example of where it's at right now. It's always subject to change. Most people are going to be in this center category, $500 to 10 grand. That's a pretty big range, right? But even when you're within there, paying only 10% to Upwork is really not that big of a deal if you're building in your pricing correctly. It's still super affordable. And remember, they're bringing you business, they're giving you payment protection, and you're building feedback and social proof on your profile. So what do you really need to succeed on Upwork? Like a total beginner who's never used the site before, what do you have to have? You are not going to succeed unless you have a great pitch, unless you have a decent profile that explains who you are and what you do, and unless you have samples of your work, if you're a visual or verbiage-based freelancer, or testimonials. So if you are someone who runs marketing campaigns or a virtual assistant or a data entry specialist, you might not have samples of your work. So you might instead have testimonials from clients you've worked with off of Upwork, or even testimonials from past jobs or volunteer work that you had. This helps show clients who you are and what you are about. You do not need a website, okay? Use Upwork essentially as your website in the short term. If you are worried about paying $10 a month for Upwork, you definitely don't have the time and money to be building a website. And honestly, Upwork can bring you more work than your website. So I did not have a website for the first 3 years of being in business. I relied 100% on my Elance Upwork profiles and my LinkedIn profile. So save money where you can. If you're going to figure out where to divert money, I would definitely say use some other place where you can store your pitch deck, your profile information, your samples, but then pay to be on Upwork, because that's where the money opportunities are. And if you generate enough money, you can build that website someday, but it's not a must do. So now let's talk about the dream happening. You've landed a gig on Upwork. Someone has made an official offer for you to work with them. It has to come from the client's end. And this is another thing. So when they merged from Elance to Upwork, they lost some of the really good features about Elance. So in Elance, if I had an existing job with a client, I could easily propose the next milestone, or I could easily ask to have more hours added to a contract. They've given a lot of power over to the clients, which is unfortunate because most clients find Upwork to be a really clunky website. It's not easy for them to use, so they can't always find the button they need to find. And you have to do some education of, okay, if you're going to hire me, you need to click the button that says hire this freelancer. Then you'll have to click a button that says make an offer, and then you'll have to fund the escrow. So you might have to walk the clients through it. But essentially, once that button is hit on the client's end, it will come to you as an offer being made. It will detail the description of the offer, if it's a set number of hours per week or if it's a fixed price milestone. And you and your client might have agreed to something else in the message room when they interviewed you for the job. You might have said, well, this initial job was for $1,000. I really think we should start off with, just this $100 milestone to see how it goes. So it might alter, it might look slightly different from the request for proposal based on what you discussed. So after the client makes the offer, you then accept it or you can decline it. Now, if you're working on a fixed price job, you complete the work and you will see in your My Jobs section of Upwork where you can submit work for the client to review. Now, if the client is Upwork savvy or online a lot, they can release that milestone immediately to you if they don't want any changes. Now, if they want changes, you'll get an email that says, so-and-so has requested changes. That's your chance to go back in, read their feedback, incorporate it, and resubmit it. Another thing that tends to happen on Upwork, especially if you've been working with the client for a while, they honestly just forget that you are waiting for them to release that money. So this comes up more often than you'd think. When you complete a milestone and let's say you submit it and everything and you're waiting and you don't hear from the client, if they're out of town, if they're not signed into Upwork, if they did literally just forget, it will automatically be released to you in 14 days unless the client signs in sooner and releases it. So you will get that money, or unless the client signs in and says, hey, there's problems, or, I'm not happy with this, it needs to be revised. So just know that, and that number might change too, but as of right now, that's what that number is, that after 14 days, it will come to you. So never count your chickens before they hatch. I see a lot of freelancers doing that. Like, I'm waiting for this $400 payment from this client. It's not yours until it's released from your Upwork profile. It's released from that escrow amount. Now, if you're doing an hourly job, it's a little bit different. So they may still ask for revisions on the work that you completed, but the time clock, you log things into the work diary and they go on UTC time for when that's completed. So I'm in East Coast, that's like 9 p.m. Sunday night. They take all the hours you billed in the last week, and then the client gets billed on Monday. Now, as a client, the money gets taken out of my payment account from my Upwork freelancers on Monday, but it essentially sits there for 10 days before it's released to the freelancer. So keep that in mind when a fixed price milestone is released, usually 4 to 6 days after the client has released it or it's been automatically released, can you withdraw it to whatever you want in your profile. You could withdraw it to PayPal or a bank account, and of course factor in extra time that it might take to transfer between those different things, but that's usually the case. The hourly jobs are different. So if it's Thursday now, I build clients ending on Sunday, I'm not going to get paid for that month, for the week that I billed ending last Sunday, until Wednesday, or actually Tuesday night, because they use UTC time zone. So when I know that Tuesday nights at 8 p.m., I can go in and withdraw that money and get it moving through my bank account. And as I shared, the milestone will release to you after a certain period of time with no action by the client. But you want to build these timeframes into your expectations if you plan to use Upwork, because a lot of people have the misconception that Upwork is their fast money generator. It takes, no shorter than 4 days to get that money in your actual account. Even when you've completed it and the client's approved it, that's not something your client is doing to you. Upwork is essentially holding that money. So be aware of that. If you're thinking, I need this to pay my electricity bill tomorrow or to pay my subcontractor tomorrow, it's not going to work like that. So change your expectations of paying your own bills or your business bills a little bit to be in line with that. And then if you're done, the contract then is complete and feedback is left. And feedback is so, so, so important on Upwork. Both the feedback you leave for a client and the feedback that the client leaves for you publicly and privately. So here's what not to do on Upwork. Do not violate the terms of service. This looks like you going into the workroom and saying, hey, I'd rather you pay me through PayPal. Can you email me at my email address at gmail.com? Upwork watches these workrooms and they will ban you for doing things that violate the terms of service. I had a freelancer several years ago who, for whatever reason, was crazy and left me a message in the workroom, cursing, screaming, threatening me. I just reported them directly to Upwork. She was banned for life. Okay. So Upwork does take this stuff pretty seriously. You don't want to violate the terms of service. The big no-no is trying to take people off the platform. You have to pay a very hefty fee to take someone off the platform, or alternatively, if Upwork catches you doing it, you will be banned from using the site. So be aware that they are in your workroom. What isn't a violation of the terms of service is saying, hey, it would be a lot easier for me if you added me to your Trello board, or if we communicated over email, but billed through Upwork. So as a client, I like to say that so that Upwork knows I'm not trying to take this freelancer off of Upwork, it's not effective for me to sign into Upwork every day and check their work. I'd really rather they be on my Trello board with the rest of my team. So you can use Upwork as the billing processing station only, and you can turn in your work elsewhere. But violating the terms of service means trying to take the client or the client trying to take you off the platform sooner than 2 years after you met on the platform. And the fee for doing this, like if you want to move past this and say, I want to work with a client off the platform, it's been 6 months, it's thousands of dollars. So unless this is a huge client, it might not be worth it. I actually have a client that we are well past the 2-year mark, but they pay all their freelancers through Upwork. So it's easier for them to pay me that way. And it just keeps contributing to my job success score and looking good on my profile that we've worked there for years. And we've actually gone into the point where it's only 5% of everything that I'm submitting through Upwork is going to Upwork. So I specifically do keep that contract on Upwork. So just something to consider. And don't speak rudely to clients, goes without saying, but you know what? There's a bad apple in every bunch, and that example I gave you is a great one. If you are found to be inflammatory, disrespectful, if you did something like, say you were a web developer and you went in someone's website and you crashed it on purpose and the client can prove it, they're probably going to report you to Upwork. So general rules of professionalism apply. I also don't recommend taking on a job that you can't do well, even if the client has already made you an offer. Remember, you do have the opportunity to decline work on a project as well as decline interview requests. Now, interview requests are when you don't have to spend any connects on the job you're being invited to contribute to. Interview requests are a complete gamble. Sometimes they're helpful. Sometimes they have nothing to do with the skills that you actually have, but you do want to go in and accept or decline the opportunity to interview. If it's something remotely interesting to you, I'd accept the interview and submit a bid. You're not losing any connects to do so, but it's equally important that you deny the interviews as well, because that goes on your profile and shows how responsive you are. But if you take on a job you can't do well, remember I mentioned earlier the importance of feedback. If you take on a job where you're way out of your depths and you don't do well, the client might leave you horrible public feedback. They might leave you decent public feedback, but leave you poor private feedback because they're trying to be nice. Neither of those situations are going to help you with your job success score, the percentage that Upwork uses to show to the world essentially how successful they perceive you to be. So let's chat a little bit more about feedback on Upwork. Think about when you're on Amazon or when you're on eBay and you're thinking about buying something from someone or buying buying from a seller, buying a product, you're always looking at feedback, right? So if you go on to purchase any type of consumer product, then sorry, lost my train of thought there. If you go on to purchase any type of consumer product, you want to see what other people have had to say. Was it a good experience? This is much like your Upwork profile. You can learn a lot about feedback, and you need to tell your clients to leave you feedback, especially if you are new to the site. It's really, really important that you have feedback from these early days on Upwork. So just like you use reviews to decide what restaurant to go to or whether or not that movie is going to be worth the ticket prices, your clients are looking at your feedback to decide whether it's worth the gamble to work with you. So set yourself up for success by working on jobs you know you can knock out of the park. Don't take the job with the overbearing client, with somebody who seems like they have no idea what they want and you're scrambling to try to figure it out, or other situations like that where you would struggle. The client leaves private as well as public feedback. The private feedback is totally hidden from you, but can harm your job success score. And the public feedback is what actually shows up on your profile. You should prompt your clients to leave you feedback whenever you think it's going to be good. If maybe you're not sure they're going to leave good feedback, I wouldn't ask them to leave it. It's not necessarily going to boost your profile that a person doesn't leave feedback, but it's not going to hurt it. If Upwork sees that you have excessive bad feedback or no feedback, that is going to affect your job success score. And I have a whole other training all about job success score that I encourage you to check out because there's quite a lot of factors that go into that. So I'm not really going to dive into that in this particular training. So now I want to talk about, from my own personal perspective, what freelancers I think can land work on Upwork. These are the jobs and types of gigs for which I see the most demand. So if you're a really super niched person, there might not be enough demand for it to make sense for you to be on Upwork. But this is what I see as the types of gigs and people in demand. Virtual assistants, project managers, social media managers, online business managers, all very similar skill sets, but different search terms that you can use to see the demand for those jobs. Writers of all types. Writing tends to be the most competitive category on Upwork. So sometimes they do not allow new writers to join the site because they perceive that there are too many writers for the current demand. But there are lots of jobs for writers on the site. Web developers and graphic designers have lots of opportunity. Sales and market specialists. So if you're an expert in marketing, if you do AdWords, if you do Facebook ads, Pinterest ads, Instagram ads, whatever it is, there's demand for that, and general marketing strategy as well. Voiceover artists can land gigs. There's definitely a lower volume of jobs and definitely a lower volume of retainer-based work when compared with other types of gigs like VAs or writers, but it's there. Video editors, lawyers, believe it or not, there are attorneys on Upwork. I know a lot about this because as a legal writer, I'm constantly being invited to jobs for actual attorneys in which people are looking for someone to write a draft or to send in a submission to court or to provide them with legal advice, which is why I don't recommend the Upwork interview the Upwork interview program, because it reads keywords very poorly as of the time of this recording. So not always accurate. IT and networking specialists, engineers, especially IT type engineers. If you're a translator, you might find jobs in that category or even the writing category. Customer service specialists, transcriptionists. I have an ongoing relationship with a transcriptionist on Upwork who I love working with, so there's definitely demand there. So let's talk quickly about how do I get paid. So I already went over this a little bit. Hourly jobs are paid 10 days after the timesheet is sent in. Bonuses. So sometimes a client might want to send you a bonus, or it's easier for them to send the set amount as a bonus rather than setting up a milestone and waiting for you to submit approval for the milestone. The long-term client that I have on Upwork, I just send him a bill every week and he pays it as a bonus. So it depends on whether it's a bonus or a milestone and some other factors, but it's usually paid out to your account 4 to 7 days after the milestone is released, either automatically or by the client. Woo! All right, so now I'm going to go and check as the questions. So if you do have questions here, oh yes. So what if you, okay, so this is about the Upwork time tracker, which I hate, but deactivating that and telling the client there's a little button they can check, or even when they hire you, there's a little thing that pops up that says allow manual time. You want to tell your clients to do that, especially if you log your time another way. I log time for my hourly clients using a tool called Toggle. So I don't need one more thing to keep track of. Like the Upwork time tracker is so glitchy. It slows down my computer so much that I just tell clients, hey, I track my time through Toggle. If that's okay with you, I'm just going to come in at the end of the day and add it in anyways, but I don't want to keep track of that. So yeah, definitely one of the questions is, what if you forget to start or stop a time? Then you have a difficult situation of, let's say you forgot to bill 20 minutes, but you were legitimately working. The way their system works is it gives you a score based on how the screenshots are and your activity. So how often are you clicking your mouse or typing? So you'd have to like fake work to make that up, which I just find to be really silly that someone should have to do that kind of thing. Okay. Yes, Upwork does have a paid membership. That's one of the questions that came in. As of right now, of the time of this recording, it's $10 a month. They have some different options. You can check that out. I do recommend it. So Pamela says, I tell people it's no different than being a subcontractor. The firm owner bills their client, takes a percentage of that payment. You get the rest. Yes, it's a cost of doing business. There are many different costs that you pay to be in business. As a user on PayPal, when I receive payments from clients, a portion of that payment goes to PayPal in fees. Or if you use a service where you're paying monthly, like my accounting software that's happening every month, I'm getting billed for that. It's a cost of doing business, but Upwork is bringing me money. And if you're doing it right, should be bringing you money too. So there's a question, you can't do a test project. No, you can do a test project. It just cannot be free. The reason for this is that there are some sneaky people on Upwork, clients, who like to say, oh, I want you to design this logo for me as a sample project, and then we'll decide from there what's the best. Well, who's to say that client isn't doing that with 3 other graphic designers, stealing all of the logos and then using your work? As far as a copyright, it'd be really hard to pursue them for that because you agreed to a quote unquote free sample project, but you're not being paid for the work that you did. So it's against Upwork's terms to do a free job. You can tell a client what it would cost to do a sample test project. And I love doing test projects. They're great, but make sure that they know that it does have to be paid. And that's only reasonable. You would not ask your dentist if you could have a sample teeth cleaning, right? And then you'll decide if you want to get the cavities filled. It's just crazy. So for freelancers, stand by your value. Yeah, I miss that the competition review as well. I liked being able to see what my competitors were charging because maybe I couldn't beat them on price, maybe I could, but it was good to know what was out there in the market. Okay. Is it visible via Google that someone is on Upwork when someone looks up their name? Yes, it is. And that's why you want to be careful about what feedback you do get on Upwork. You don't want bad feedback. You don't want that to come up when somebody Googles your name. Upwork works for me as a marketing tool, even if I'm not getting the client through there. So I've actually had a number of clients find me through LinkedIn, and then they will Google me, see my Upwork profile, and it only helps them decide to work with me because they see so many other people left positive feedback. So yes, it's another place for you to land business and show how great you are. And yes, if you get paid via PayPal, it's immediate, and you do have to pay $1 for the transfer. It does take a couple days if you transfer via your bank. Another thing I'd advise you to be very careful about with PayPal, if you're getting paid a lot on Upwork, is an issue we talked about a couple of weeks back in the Summer of Strategy training with bookkeeper Eric. That is that if you are receiving a 1099 from Upwork and from PayPal, that money is essentially at risk of being double counted by the Internal Revenue Service. They're seeing that as 2 different sets of money. So if I take $50 from Upwork and I transfer it to my PayPal account and then transfer it to my bank or leave it in my PayPal account, when it gets sent as a 1099 via PayPal and via Upwork, it looks like it's 2 different $50 payments that you're not paying taxes on, right? So the IRS thinks you owe them more money. Big mess. Any client that is paying you through PayPal does not need to 1099 you. This was a huge discovery for me earlier this year because I've dealt with this double and triple counting issue with the IRS a few times. And we sent out a nice letter to all of my clients with Eric's help saying, if you pay me through PayPal, please stop sending me a 1099 at the end of the year because the IRS is getting confused about that money. And then I have to dig up all the proof and go back and prove it didn't happen. So be aware of that is something you will need to keep track of, what money you got paid from Upwork and PayPal that's the same, because there will be a time when you will have to defend it to the IRS. That's why I transfer always to my bank account. I just don't even want it to get confused anymore.